Right.
Okay. Hey, Melissa.
Hey, Amy.
So we're here today with a very special guest, and I'm quite excited that she's here. When Melissa was
Oh,
describing,
me
I'll
too.
have Melissa introduce her a little bit, though, because she's one who found our guest.
Yes, so we have had listeners ask us for information about how to help adults with dyslexia. So I have been scouring the internet, looking for people and resources, and there's not a lot out there. So one of the nights that I was up until probably 11 or 12 looking at the internet, I found Miss Natalie Brooks, and I thought, oh my gosh, I really like what she's saying. And I just kept looking at more of her information, and I just fell in love with her message. So I reached out to her through her resources. And here we are sitting with Natalie Brooks. So, Natalie, do you want to introduce yourself?
Yeah, hello. Thank you so much for having me, ladies. So my name's Natalie, and I have a company called Dyslexia In Adults. We really do what it says on the tin. We provide support to dyslexic people, but we focus specifically on adulthood. So it's not kind of what I find with a lot of dyslexic organizations is, they work with kids and adults is on the side, whereas we wanted adults to be the center of the conversation.
Very nice. Very
Mm.
That's
nice.
an amazing idea. Just as a fascinating idea, because I think a lot of times what I've found with my students' parents, they didn't know they had dyslexia. But then when they get their kids identified, they're like, oh,
Absolutely. Mm.
I had it
So
too.
Yeah, so there's a lot of late diagnosed people, but I think also the challenges don't so much go away, but more evolve as you become into adulthood. And we often are helping people with confidence from past poor educational experiences, or helping people understand their strengths and what career paths they should be going for, alongside, of course, building a toolkit of strategies for your meetings, for managing your to-do list, for dealing with the onslaught of emails, whatever it is. There's lots of dyslexic challenges still in the modern day world, even if technology is kind of day by day helping us.
Mhm.
You're making me think back to when I went, so out in, at least in Texas, when we have our special ed meetings, we call them ARDs, they're ARD meetings. And I can remember when this child would get identified with dyslexia, I would start talking about things that the parents had put, the qualitative items that the parents had put in the report, things that I saw they were doing when they were doing the assessment, all those qualitative observational pieces. And the parents were like, well, that's how I did it, or that's how when my brother was in school, that's what he used to do. And they're just kind of coming into it going, oh, okay. So because we know it is inherited. And then I
Mm.
can also remember, just like you said, some bad experiences when I say, okay, I think your child is dyslexic. We want to put them in dyslexia therapy, and they think of special education as this place where it's all the severely profoundly handicapped kids are. And I'm like, no, special education is, there for everyone, not just, a few who need the most support. It's for people who need support. And so we have to make sure that we dispel this myth that it's not a good place, but it's a good thing for our students.
The thing that I always say to people is that, and if anyone has come across my content or does look up, dyslexia in adults after this, one of the things we're very passionate about is dyslexia not being your superpower. And the reason we say that is I often feel it's quite a large bar for people to reach to try and get to superpower level, to feel that your brain is kind of superpowered is a big ask for someone who may have had a lot of challenges in their life. And so, what I like to say is that dyslexia is just neutral. It is neither bad nor good. It is just different, and different is neutral. And, your set of challenges are different to someone else's set of challenges, and your set of strengths, because of course we know there are dyslexic strengths, your set of strengths are just different to other people's set of strengths. And different is neither bad nor good, it's neutral. And I
Um,
think that's what you're kind of saying about special education as well. It's not you're somehow incapable, but the things that you need to be able to achieve and succeed are different, and that difference is neutral.
Mm-hmm,
Right.
mm-hmm.
That's a
I
wonderful
agree.
way to put it. And I guess I would like to know if you could share a little bit with our listeners, what is your background? What led you to your career?
Yeah.
What put you here?
So, I was diagnosed with dyslexia when I was about 7, and I was lucky enough to go to schools that were supportive of dyslexia. So I kind of had this intrinsic belief that dyslexic people deserved support because that's what I kind of grew up having.
Mm-hmm.
And so I was kind of very clear that there was strategies for dyslexic people and there was ways of working to make it easier. And then when I became an adult, I was like, wait, what's the adult stuff? Like I had the children's stuff, and I'm not saying that school was a breeze and easy, and I just kind of clicked my fingers and got through it, but it was significantly more manageable because of the support that I got.
Hmm.
And I was kind of entered the workforce, and I was like, okay, guys, like, what's the plan here? Like, what's the strategies? What's the plan? What's the approach? And it was, as you kind of said, crickets, it was tumbleweed. There was nothing for adults. And my confidence was kind of really just tanking out because of that. And I felt like lost and unsure, just simple things like, what do you say to your manager as a dyslexic person? And what do you kind of do about dyslexic challenges and in the work world and all of these things? What support do you ask for? Really just the basics that I was really struggling with alongside really low confidence, and it was impacting my life quite significantly. I would go home and feel exhausted, or I'd kind of cry a lot to my boyfriend and be like, I just feel like I've made this mistake and I feel so stupid and I'm so embarrassed. And sometimes it would have real world implications. I'd have meetings where my bosses were like, this is not good enough, and my job was becoming at risk, and a few times it did end up being let go because of these challenges. And I remember throughout my 20s saying, someone should do this, someone should figure this out, someone should deal with this problem. And I got to my late 20s and I realized that no one was going to do it. And the impact on me for it not kind of being dealt with was only getting bigger and bigger, and the problems were compounding. And I kind of, yeah, just tried to create the change in the world that I wanted to see. And then I went on to get qualifications in executive function. I've supported over 3,000 dyslexic people through our different programs. We have over a reach of 150,000 people. Our podcast has downloads of over 120,000. We've worked with companies like Microsoft, BCG. So it's just kind of mad what's happened in the last 5 years. So I'm kind of, I am client one, and then I've learned what has worked for me and brought that with qualifications, and then kind of took that and, really snowballed that advice kind of as far and wide as we can possibly make it.
Wow.
That's so inspiring. And kudos to you. And thank you for making such a difference in the world, in a place that seems still kind of empty, but you're doing it. You're doing it for all.
I'm trying my best. I'm certainly trying my best.
It's
That's
wonderful.
awesome. That's
Mm.
awesome. So, Melissa and I primarily work with kids in elementary, maybe some middle and high school kids, and there's different needs across the board, right? So, like your elementary kids, we see a lot of, like, especially young elementary, a lot of support needed in excuse me, phonological awareness and decoding skills. And then as they move into secondary, we see that they need, when I say secondary, I mean like grades 6 through 12. We see that they need support with maybe fluency or comprehension, especially spelling and written composition. That's still a big player. Their needs differ as they go through the different grade levels. What are some of the common characteristics and maybe even some of the similar needs that adults with dyslexia might have?
Yeah, I find that where people come to me at is, of course, they do have the classic issues of phonological awareness and all of that kind of sentence structure and those kind of things. But that is ever so slightly more taken away by years of experience and kind of the, the simple ways of remembering things, but also spell check, Grammarly, all the kind of classics. So I find that that's not really why someone would come to me. It's kind of like annoying rather than, enough of a problem to kind of really engage with. Where I find that kind of people are meeting me and engaging with me is it's more difficulties in kind of the pace of work. So, what they are asked to do and how long it may take them to understand a new project or kind of get through all of their emails. They're kind of exhausted by the process of all those emails. They can read them fine and they can process them, but what has that taken from them? Or they might find that breaking down their ideas and really communicating them in the speed that is required can be really difficult. So they may be asked a question and ordering and organizing their thoughts feels really difficult in the moment, or keeping up and processing in meetings with those working memory issues. You're sat in 3 4 hours of back-to-back meetings and your working memory is just shot, and then you're asked to kind of write notes in the last meeting of the day and you just think to yourself, oh no. So I find it's a lot more of like not individual kind of one thing, but the onslaught of the kind of consistent level of challenges and just kind of swimming 10% back from the rest of the pack and kind of pushing yourself to keep up. So I'd say it's kind of this feeling of like you've worked harder and you're not even still at the same level as where everyone else is at. And that kind of compounding feeling over, in many cases, decades. And often what happens is that maybe people have kids or they take on a new job or their boss is less supportive and they just don't have the capacity to work the hours that is required for what they need to achieve. And so they kind of fall over, and that's where I come in and we look at strategies and we look at being accepting of being more different and how you can make your strengths outshine your challenges and all of those kind of more complicated, gritty parts of being different.
One of our early podcasts, we had a multi-generational dyslexics on, and it was my best friend, who's my age, I'm in my 50s, and then her daughter, who's in her 30s, and her granddaughter, and of course, my friend, her mom is also dyslexic. So we have 4 generations right there. And I can remember, my friend Carolyn is my age. She has no problem telling her bosses that she's dyslexic. She needs some more time. Maybe this is going to take, especially she said anything that has to do with numbers. She gets them and she has to code numbers and sometimes she puts them out of order. So she needs a little more time. But her daughter, who's in her 30s, is not feeling that confidence to tell her boss, hey, I'm dyslexic. And this is a lot on me right now because she's fearful of being let go from her job for something along those lines.
And those feels are real. They're very real. It's happened to me, and even though we have really good legal protections in the UK, it still happens.
Mm,
So
Interesting.
I guess that kind of leads me to, and this is a question we were going to ask a little bit later, but I think it's kind of appropriate right now. So what are some of the things that you do help with when these adults come to you and they need support? What are some of the things that you implement for them or help them see differently?
Yeah, so I think when it comes to the first thing is we need to have good strategies, right? Like we've got no, for most people, they have no foundation of what works or what doesn't. So getting a really clear picture of what is it that you're struggling with, if it's working memory, executive functions, confidence, whatever, processing speed, whatever may be kind of coming forward, trying to build that base of strategies. And for working memory, it's helping people understand you need to drop information off. You can't just keep overloading it. You've got to create space to drop things off to be able to allow new things to come in. So how can we do that in meetings? How can we kind of confidently repeat things? Take a break, say, sorry, I just need to write that down. Those kind of simple tips, but people aren't using because they don't understand. They just think I get confused and flustered. They don't understand it's working memory and it's a capacity of four or five things. And then it's just time to drop off.
Mhm.
I describe working memory to my clients as a kind of waiter who's put too many plates on his arms.
Oh,
And the best thing to do is just to take two plates from the kitchen to the table rather than try and take six, because otherwise all six plates are going to fall down. So that's kind of how I try and help people understand it. So first things we need to build some kind of really good strategies. Or if you're struggling with processing and breaking something down, how can we brain dump and kind of start accessing our critical thinking to be able to kind of process what's going on and see those interconnections that are so important for us. Or if it's processing speed, how can we build that big picture first to allow information to click in and make sense? I kind of think of it as like your brain is a fishing trawler at the bottom of the ocean, and it's kind of trawling along, and it just needs like little hooks of things to kind of click into. And when you have that big picture, you create little hooks that your brain can kind of grab things onto. There's lots of like tips based on where people are at and what exactly they're struggling with. So that's kind of
do you,
step one. We need those strategies, right? And then step two is often really the truth of the matter is we need to have the confidence to implement those strategies, to take the space to repeat things, to allow someone to explain something to you again so that you might be able to process it better, to be able to communicate in your style rather than kind of getting flustered and feeling like you've talked in circles and then, clamming up. The confidence to really implement these strategies is essential. And then, on top of that, figuring out what someone's strengths are and making sure that they shine. So it's kind of three parts to it. And it all starts with strategies, but that's really the beginning.
do you feel like the anxiety that comes from trying to manage all of those things at one time kind of compounds the issues that they might be feeling at that time, trying to balance all the working?
Absolutely. Like that's what I find I say to people who are doing my one-on-one coaching, I say, listen, I could give you all the strategies in about 2 hours, but my job is to sit with you and implement all of this, to make sure you're sticking with it, to make sure that it's working for you. Like that's what I'm really here for. And a lot of that is managing people's anxiety, managing confidence, like helping people feel like they've got the phrasing to communicate these things that isn't going to make people feel nervous in how to say these things. And I think, from a pure neuroscience perspective, we know that working memory is impacted by cortisol. So if you're stressed and flustered, your working memory that you're already so irritated by is only going to get worse. So, confidence, a lot of people think of as nice to have, but if you want a bigger working memory, first step is not be so nervous. So it's essential from both a strategies perspective and like actually doing the right things perspective.
That's hard. That's really hard.
That's
I mean, I am not dyslexic, but today I was having a moment trying to send out an email with an attachment to the person I was on the phone with, and I couldn't find the attachment in my documents. I was like,
And you're getting flustered. Yeah,
yeah.
exactly.
So it was freaking me out a little bit, and I had to stop and apologize to her. I said, I'm getting a little flustered. Just give me a half a second to pull it together, and boom, then I found it. No problem.
And that is what, confidence is kind of advocating for yourself, giving yourself that half a second. And the problem for neurodiverse people is we have no trust in our brains. We don't believe that half a second will make a difference. So we kind of push on instead of saying, sorry, I'm getting a bit overwhelmed. Just give me a second. Or if someone's watching you type, just, sorry, actually, can you go over there? Like, I just need to kind of do this, whatever it is. But you'd be surprised that these small things make a huge difference, but we've just lost so much trust in our brains that it's so difficult to really implement them.
That's
And you think that trust comes from those years of
yeah.
just dealing with dyslexia in general?
Yeah, and kind of white knuckling it. You're kind of like gripping your hands, just hoping for the best or using hard work and the consistent criticisms. One of my favorite studies to reference, and the statistics with neurodiversity are terrible, that nothing is ever kind of as widely researched as we would like, but people with ADHD by the time they are 12 have often received on average 20,000 additional criticisms.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. And so, obviously the challenges that someone has with ADHD cross over a lot with the challenges someone with dyslexia might have. And, it just shows what it feels like to be different and pushed to try and be normal. You can kind of extrapolate that experience to someone's experience with dyslexia and autism. And, just by the age of 12, having that many criticisms, associated with neurodiversity is kind of like no wonder we lack confidence.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. When you've had a lifetime of that, I can't, because it stands, I can still remember criticisms from my childhood. And I had a good childhood, let me tell you. I really enjoyed it. But any negative comment, I still recall. I can't imagine.
Exactly. I mean, I went to a school that specialized in neurodiversity, and my teachers told me not to go to university because I was thick. I mean, like, and, my parents, tried to do the best. And, so it just shows like what else is, happening to other people. And it's not even like I was in school in the 90s. So,
Right.
like, God help, 70s and 80s and beyond.
Mhm.
Right.
You're exactly
Mm.
right. So in your experience or in your opinion, what adult traits of dyslexia do you think people should know or understand better than they do? I know the dyslexic needs of adults are different, but what do you think just everybody should understand a little bit better about adults with dyslexia?
Yeah, I think if you're dyslexic yourself, the thing that, like, I know I've harped on about working memory, but if you don't understand working memory, then I think you will often replace that knowledge with an automatic negative comment of kind of I'm stupid, I'm useless, I'm lazy, I'm incapable, whatever, insert, insult here. Um, so understanding working memory is kind of really essential for managing your neurodiversity better, because it really just does help you understand why you get flustered, why you can't order your thoughts as well, why you forget things regularly. So I think that's a really essential one. I think the other thing is, we know it's literacy skills and phonological processing and all of those things. But I think what I see a lot more in what is really struggling for neurodiverse people and dyslexic people particularly is that processing speed and really what it is taking for someone to process something. And I think, more awareness of that, the kind of conversation of diagnostic criteria in the UK is changing to include processing speeds,
Oh, nice.
just to really ensure that people are aware of that that importance when it comes to, dyslexia and how frustrating it can be.
Yeah.
So you mentioned a little bit about your just now about the identification process. So what does that look like in the UK? We know what it looks like here, at least in Texas. We don't know across the whole United States, but what are some of the things that happen there for identification?
Yeah, I mean, I'm not an assessor myself because to be an assessor in the UK, you have to have a teaching qualification and a certain number of years as a teacher. So, dyslexia is very rooted as a learning difference, and so it's kind of the assessment path is through teaching. So I'm not an assessor myself, for that reason. But I think one of the things I'd love to kind of plug when it comes to adults and assessments is how good screening tools are starting to become, particularly from an adult perspective, where really your requirement and need of an assessment is a kind of a yes or a no, a tick box of like kind of confidence to start the journey of saying, should I do something about this? Should I look into these? And to kind of end that questioning in your head of like, is this really what's going on? And to move into strategies. Diagnosing it, a formal diagnosis for children makes so much sense because it provides you access to so much support, but that isn't really the case as an adult. So I think it's, important to look at screening from an adult perspective to give you that checkbox of like, okay, yes, and then kind of go forward into strategy. So I think that is kind of my big perspective when it comes to adults is if you're going back into education, if you're going to get a master's or anything like that, and you're taking formal qualifications where you can get extra time, a diagnosis makes perfect sense. But where you're
Right.
just trying to say to yourself, am I or am I not? Maybe a screening is the better option for you.
That makes sense. And I think too, just as future family planning, if you think you might have a family one day, you might want to know if you're at risk for dyslexia, you could definitely pass that on to your future
Mm.
generations. So that's something to be aware of so that when your kid goes to school, hey, you know what? They might be having this and I need to be more aware of this as well.
Absolutely, yeah, for sure. And I think the statistics are that if one parent has dyslexia, it's a 50% likelihood of having dyslexia. So, it's like it's a very like it's not just oh maybe, it's kind of quite real.
Yeah,
Yeah,
right.
for sure.
So do you know what your current identification rates are for students over there in England or in UK?
The kind of the most interesting statistic I have on this is that it's thought that 80% of dyslexic people in the UK are undiagnosed. So the kind of undiagnosed rate is really high.
Mm.
But there is a lot of really interesting conversations going on. Um, they're kind of in that early bubbling stage. They're not kind of going through yet of trying to get screening for dyslexia as standard across all children. So all children will go for a dyslexic screener and then they can go up into a diagnosis as standard across all children. There's kind of the big work that's being trying to be done by the dyslexic community in the UK. So it's been proposed a couple of times in Parliament as a law to see if we can get it through. It hasn't yet passed, but there's a lot of momentum happening with that. So that's kind of the big thing that's going on here.
That would be huge. That would be
Mm.
absolutely huge to have that information early on and kind of, get the kids while they're younger so that we know how to work with them and maybe avoid some of that criticism, that ongoing criticism, or at least eliminate some of it that they might have, throughout their life.
Yeah, and my perspective is that if we could get dyslexia recognized to its like true reality of how many people are dyslexic, then instead of dyslexia being seen as, you need to go over there, we could instead say, well, this is how we need our education system to be, because we know that whatever helps a dyslexic person actually really benefits everyone else. Lots of
Right.
people, everyone's got a weak capacity for working memory, especially when you're a child and your kind of executive functions aren't fully online until you're 25. So really, like why we are teaching the way we are, not just for dyslexic learners, but if we change the approach, would give so much of a lift to dyslexic learners, but would be valuable across the spectrum. So I think if we had a full grasp of the reality of what is going on in our schools, then maybe a wholesale change would start to feel more sensible.
Yeah, no, I cannot remember who the researchers are. I think it's Snow and Jewell talking about structured literacy. It's harmful for none, but crucial for some, meaning our
Mm.
dyslexic population, and I train a lot of teachers to practitioner and therapists. So I throw out that quote a lot.
Exactly. I think that's the thing is like we're harming no one and helping, many by these strategies. And yet dyslexia feels like it's kind of othered, like, it's the people over there. And I don't think that that's really the approach that is going to get us, wholesale change.
Well, and
Obviously we've got the reality of the people right now, but you know, the change that needs to come.
if there's a percentage of about 20% of our population having dyslexia on some sort of the spectrum, in our state alone, we have just about 6% identified. So we're
Mm,
missing a lot of people. And, we're in a big state, we're in the state of Texas, but you think about that's a huge number. And the state of Texas does a lot to try to help the dyslexic population. So what's happening in other areas, I think is concerning. And I know that these types of talks and us getting the word out there is going to help, but I would love to see even more going forward. So
yeah, absolutely.
yeah.
So let's talking about we had a podcast earlier with Kareem Weaver, who is a big literacy advocate, and he talked about the prison pipeline, and at least in the United States, about how what was some astronomical number, like
Yes, it was like
80%.
70 to 80%
Yeah,
of the
the
incarcerated individuals.
prisoners are dyslexic or undiagnosed dyslexics, right?
So I think there was a statistic that looked at Texas prison population that said that 50% of prisoners that were surveyed in Texas prisons had dyslexia. So I'm not surprised that it's even higher. I mean,
Mhm.
if you look at, how it affects you alone is a huge factor. But then if you add in the fact that around 40%, if not more, people who have dyslexia have ADHD, and then the risk tolerance with people with ADHD makes them, far more likely to kind of commit crimes. It all really just makes a lot of sense, doesn't it?
Well, and you think about it, we live in such a print embedded world. Whether I know we talk about technology all the time, but everything around you is in print in some way, shape, or form. Driving a car, you have to be able to read that street sign quickly and accurately. You have to be able to read your GPS, even though it might tell you which way to go. You want to make sure you don't veer off into a pond or something like
Don't
that.
even get me started with lefts and rights. Jeez.
Right. Right. That's exactly right. Our students, our adults, all of us have difficulty with directionality and left and right and up and down and things like that.
I
And
can't tell you how many people have told me that they've had left and right tattooed onto their hands. Like, I
really,
cannot tell you
That's a
how
great
many
idea.
people have said that to pass their driving test, they got left and right tattooed onto their hands.
wow. I and I've seen it with the little kids because, like I said, we work with a lot of smaller children, and they put the B and the D on their hand so that they have that directionality of the ball and the stick, basically, so they can
Mm.
do it correctly. But left and right, that's interesting. I haven't heard that before. Um, do you think enough is being done to support our adults and just not even we were talking about prison, but let's kind of move away from that. How can we bring support more into our work life? How can we normalize this being dyslexic with bosses and managers and things like that?
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot of work to be done, right? Like it's a big task for sure. And as you said, there's not a lot of shoulders carrying the weight of change. And I'm better qualified to speak about the UK, and I do think we are a global leader in how we are handling neurodiversity. Now, that doesn't mean that we're doing a great job. It just means we're ahead of the pack. And we've got some great legal protections, which is really wonderful. We've got some amazing support offers from our government, and we have something called Access to Work, where you can access funding to get assistive technology instead of asking for your sort of employer to
Mm.
pay for it. You can also get coaching covered. From the UK government to be able to get support and advice for managing your dyslexia. So we've got a lot of the kind of core pieces in place, which is great, and obviously some areas and ways that can look to be replicated. I think I can only speak for my own personal mission, and that is that I really want to democratize the basics of managing dyslexia successfully, because I think what I feel quite frustrated by is that we are still living in a world where we are kind of like arguing with people that dyslexia, it doesn't impact
Right.
intelligence, that dyslexia has strengths, that dyslexia, like, has kind of certain impacts that really like people should know and understand by now. Um, and so I think for me, just trying to kind of pump out as much as possible, people getting the real basics, like knowing what working memory is, knowing what executive functions are, understanding, what processing speed really means, and kind of helping people just get those kind of standard pieces, or understand that neurodiversity, really plays together. So if you have dyslexia, you really need to think about, do you have ADHD and autism, and the other way around. Um, so my mission is not so much about changing the world, because frankly that's just a rather large task in itself. My mission is really about helping individuals manage their dyslexia better and just getting the basics up to speed, for everyone. So if that resonates with you, we've got a free guide, we've got a free podcast, we've got free content on the on our social medias. So we are like really doing our best to get the kind of core information out there.
Nice. That's amazing. And that's kind of what Melissa and I, with our intent was as well, is to, we call it, the things that are out there that don't hold up. We call it snake oil, So
Mm,
we're trying not to put the snake oil out there. We're trying to dispel whatever.
absolutely. Yeah.
Yeah. And I feel like a podcast or even a video cast is a great way to reach multiple people that I only had like a small little reach. Melissa only had like a small little reach.
Mhm.
You and look at us. We're talking to people in England.
I know.
I mean, this is amazing. This is amazing.
Okay, so I think too, another thing that has come up a lot, um, I'm thinking about my students who have grown up and now they're ready to go on to college. And another thing that has come up often is they don't know how to do that transition. So sometimes we've had difficulty getting their accommodations up to the college level where the college will accept it. And we've also had a guest on who talked about the accommodations, what needed to be done. But since you've got that market in the UK, and we never know where our people in the United States are going to go. What if they want to go to the UK and learn there? What are some of the things that you guys do to help kids get into that level of study?
Getting into university,
Yes,
or
yes.
yeah. To be honest, like my experience is more with kind of workplace. So I think one of the things that I have seen, kind of a common question, that your kids are going from school to university, their next question often ends up being, well, what's the right job for me? Or if they're going to university, they're kind of career planning and thinking, well, what do I want to do? And then often the question of like, what is the most dyslexic friendly job comes up a lot.
Right.
And I think what I feel is that the the kind of perspective of a dyslexic friendly job doesn't really exist, because doesn't matter what job you're in, you're going to be bombarded with emails, you're going to be kind of probably sat in meetings, and or whatever, the working memory challenges kind of follow you wherever you are. And there's very few jobs that have kind of no writing or reading kind of requirements, or little. It's quite unusual.
Mm.
So I think the key for me is not about outrunning your dyslexia, but trying to really think about, how does how can you kind of find the right environment for your dyslexia to shine? So if you want to be a lawyer, I don't think there's any reason why you can't. If you want to, do a kind of like a very, complicated science program, and things like that, there's no reason that you can't. But you've got to think about the environment. Are they kind of particularly fast paced? Is detail the most important thing, and how can you find a role and a kind of place in your industry where they value ideas and they give you the opportunity to really get depth on a subject rather than having to learn something new kind of every few months. So my kind of message to people when they're asking that question of, what do I do with my next stage of my life and where do I start that career piece is how can you think about what makes something dyslexic friendly to you? What have you learned through education? And how can you build that into the right company for you? So that's kind of always been my message on that.
And all of our dyslexics exist on a spectrum, and they're going to have their strengths and weaknesses, just like all of us with dyslexia or not will have. And I have a friend of mine who's actually a teacher, who is dyslexic. And one of the things that he's discovered is not discovered because he didn't find it, but he's discovered in his job course is the use of AI to type up maybe some presentations, maybe some reports that he's sending home to parents. So how is technology supporting maybe like AI or C-reader pens or any of those? How is that helping our dyslexics?
Yeah, I think AI is really, like I said, where people come to me is the more complex end of managing dyslexia. It's not as kind of simple as like, I can't read my emails, but it's more
Right.
like I've got 100 emails to read and I can't read them
Yeah.
in 30 seconds. Um, so I think AI really is the kind of the game changer for neurodiverse people. I know for me, like my AI meeting notes is in this meeting right now, and one of the things is it does is it goes through my emails and it just starts off the email for me, and so it's less mental load for me to kind of quickly change the email to say, oh, that's like, that part is right, but this part isn't, than to kind of go through the whole email. And also if AI has started off the email, there's less chance of me reading it incorrectly, because what often happens is I'll read it and I'll go, oh, they mean this, and then I'll think, oh no, that doesn't make sense.
Yeah.
So it kind of really helps. And also, often I've got these great ideas, but just kind of getting them over the line is just kind of like moving mountains. And so being able to kind of speak to AI and use the voice service to kind of discuss your idea. And then your next stage is kind of just fine tuning it, just makes the whole process feel so much more achievable. So I do really feel like AI is the revolution that dyslexic, adults have been crying out for.
Yeah, I agree. I'm like I said, I am not dyslexic, but I use it for refinement. I'll have something that I've written up that, and you probably go through this too. You look at it and go, that's not quite what I'm trying to convey. And I put it into something like Grammarly, and it comes up with all these different options to make it more polished.
Mm.
That's the some of the pieces that I love with AI. And I was using it earlier today, trying to update. It's like, can you update my resume for me? I go, sure. What do you want? And I started plugging in. I already had most of it done. They're like, you need this, you need this. And I'm like, this is great because I'm usually working by myself.
Yeah. I
There's not
was
put it over.
I was sending in like an angry email a couple of days ago. Like, when someone's really annoyed you and you think, right, okay, you know what? I'm gonna do it. Like I'm gonna give them a piece of my mind. And I was kind of like really worked up and I was like getting started on my email. And then I kind of instead of writing it, I just put into AI like, this is what I want to say. Like I want to say that I'm annoyed about this thing.
Mhm.
And it wrote this like very well-mannered, polite but firm email about what I was annoyed about. And I would have spent probably well over an hour fussing and like, analyzing. And I was like, yeah, I would have been harsher because I'm annoyed, but that's probably a better email. Copy,
Yes,
paste, send. And
yes,
a task that would have been 40 minutes of me fussing was, 5 minutes tops. And, 35-minute time saving is really just
I agree.
compounds. makes a huge difference.
Yes, I totally, completely agree. I know a lot of people aren't necessarily on board with AI, but used the correct way, it has huge benefits, huge time-saving benefits for everyone, for sure.
I
So
think,
do you,
time saving for sure, but actually energy saving is the
Yeah,
main thing that I see with my clients is, it's just we we're about to run this course on burnout and emotional exhaustion of managing dyslexia, and I'm doing it with an educational psychologist, and she's got this great analogy of you've only got so many spoons in the drawer, and once you've taken out all the spoons, there's nothing left. You can't use a fork to eat soup, and her analogy is as neurodiverse people, we have less spoons in the drawer to start with, but then things take more spoons from us to do something, and I think that's often my message with AI is an email that that angry email that I wanted to kind of sit down and bash out and type on my keyboard nice and hard would have probably been 3 spoons, and instead it was barely a teaspoon
yeah.
to kind of like get through, and that's a lot of what I'm battling with my clients on is what is it taking from you so that
Yeah.
you can get home to your family and not feel broken at the end of the day.
When you write a book, that should be the title of your book. I wrote it down, Can't Use a Fork to Eat Soup. That is the title
Um,
for your book.
a note for Greg, but the book's coming out next year and the title's already set actually. But Greg, this has got to
Oh,
get cut.
good.
Yeah.
Okay,
Yeah.
so it sounds like you got wonderful ideas for written expression to try to overcome some of that. And I was also wondering then, these are like wonderful tips. What kind of feedback have you received from your clients who have gone through this process with you? How have they responded?
Sorry, I'm way too British to really talk positively about myself. That is really quite an ask. Gosh, you want me to speak positively about myself?
I
Oof,
would love it. I
that
mean,
feels
think
that
about
feels a
what
bit
you're doing.
unnatural. I think like I honestly feel like I really change people's lives. Like I truly have been told and believe that the true weight of what someone is carrying around as a neurodiverse person, we are often lying to ourselves about what it is taking for us to get through the day, to manage the challenges. And when someone starts honestly admitting what they are going through and finding a new way through, and finally kind of defeating the demons of how they think about themselves, how they talk about themselves, and start to see the value and the benefits and the opportunity that they do have. Often it's kind of radical how they stand taller, they speak more, they in some cases leave their husbands from really just it's something that eats into your life when you have low confidence, or when you're exhausted from what life is asking of you. It really is kind of a 360 transformation that can be achieved. And I think what often my challenge is to my community is asking them to be honest about the truth of what is going on, because people will be like, oh, well, I make the odd spelling mistake in messages, but like that's fine. I'm like, okay, well, I don't really believe that that's what's going
right.
on. And then you kind of dig a little bit deeper, and then it takes about 5 minutes, and they're crying about the fact they never achieve their career goals, and oh, you're
Yeah.
like, there, I told you. So I think it's a very personal problem that people with neurodiversity in adulthood are struggling with. They often will never have had a real and truthful conversation about what it has taken from them and what they are dealing with. And when that changes, it really is radical.
Yeah.
I think it even means more, from my perspective, it means more to me that you've walked that walk before. So
Yeah.
you are doing everything with the neurodivergence yourself, even to this day, and you've come with your own strategies and the ways you've overcome all of your life, and you bring that to your clients. I think that it just shows them that you're selling something that works.
Yeah, listen, I'm not promising a magic pill, like, and
Of
I'm very
course.
upfront with
Of
that,
course.
because the first person in the queue to take the magic pill is me, and I've not yet received my magic pill,
Yeah.
so I'm confident it doesn't exist. I'm very clear that the goal is not perfect. The goal is consistency, and the goal is confidence, and the goal is self-worth. And getting home to your family quicker. That's my goals. And I think I'm like so far from perfect. It is like really. I was having this conversation earlier with my team where someone made a mistake and they're all neurodiverse. And I was like, listen, like I make more mistakes than all of you, so like don't worry. But we need a system. We can't just keep going with these mistakes. We need instead, like we need to bin shame and get a system. So I think, yeah, no, I certainly am. Yeah, I very much lived and breathed corporate life with neurodiversity, and now I live and breathe running a small business with neurodiversity. So, I know the challenges, not just because I'm working with my clients every day, but because I am experiencing them. And I think my kind of feeling is that if we can kind of get to that neutral standpoint that I mentioned at the very beginning of like, what, I do make mistakes and that's fine. Like that's okay. But I'm living my dream. Like I'm living my goals and I'm achieving the things I want to do. And that's actually what we're trying to achieve here, not never sending a mistake in an email. And you'd never catch me like, bullying myself like I used to. So I think, yeah, it's certainly a journey, but I'm kind of proud of where I'm at on that road, and it's not a destination. It's certainly a journey that I'm just a couple of steps ahead of people on.
I
That's
like
awesome.
that you had mentioned that you feel like you're not bullying yourself anymore.
Mm,
I can slightly relate. I have had a lot of medical issues that it caused me to have some problems just managing working memory like I used to be able to. A lot of things that have gone on, and I can relate to what you're talking about. And I had to go through a lot of coaching myself with a therapist to try to help me build my confidence back up, because to just be slammed into a change in the way your brain functions to this now is
mm.
pretty alarming. So to hear you say you're not bullying yourself anymore, I feel like I'm finally getting to that place, but you're right, it's an uphill battle. You're just constantly trying to reiterate to yourself that
Yeah, and I think, what
this.
I see is that you've got lack of understanding of dyslexia, and whether or not that's because you're not diagnosed or you've never really been explained dyslexia, or whatever it is, that has led to replacing bad working memory, bad processing speed, poor executive functions, whatever it is, to I'm stupid, I'm lazy, I'm slow, I'm useless, I'm incapable. And we've kind of taken something from a challenge to a kind of an insult. And then after kind of 10 years plus, a lot of the time, those insults then become what I call low confidence habits. And so we kind of shrink and become smaller. And then you're not only just trying to change someone's confidence, you're unpicking habits of decades of being small and trying to kind of like shunt someone out of these grooves that they found themselves in of not advocating for themselves, working weekends and thinking that that's fine, and trying to kind of do all of that can be so difficult, where we've got the 20,000 extra criticisms, the lack of knowledge and the lack of systems, the low confidence, the habits that have formed. It does just become so much more complicated when you become an adult and you've got all these layers. And that's why what everyone else is working on with children is so important, that we don't have this next wave of people coming with these problems.
Yeah.
Wow.
Do you have places there in the UK where people can go to get support in, of course, going to you is going to be a really great support system. Do they have anything place else like in the colleges or universities, or do they have anything in public schools that support people?
It's getting better for sure. Like there is like special education departments, and like kind of it's becoming more of a requirement rather than something that is just occasionally is there. So it's definitely getting better. And like I said, the UK really is a global leader in this. It's just that that isn't a big achievement comparative to, where everyone else is at. So I think, we're leading the way and things are getting better. There's obviously just right now, the biggest problem is the number of people who want to access that support versus the number of people who are providing it. That's kind of our biggest problem. We've got a lot of the good basics right, but if you've got kind of 100 people for one person to see, like then, even if you have the systems, you essentially don't, because how can people access it?
Right.
The ADHD wait list for the NHS is thought to be 5 years long. So at what point do you just say, well, we don't have access to ADHD care on the NHS?
Wow. So thinking back through your present career that you have supporting adults with dyslexia, what is your favorite success story? I'm sure you have clients that come back to you and tell you about how you've helped them. What's your favorite?
Ah, the favorites are just the ones at the moment. Like you just kind of the ones where you watch the twinkle in their eye when something clicks and you just think, oh my God, you've got it. Like you're like everything's coming, like the change is gonna happen. I think that's what I love, is like watching, they're kind of fighting you on like, oh, but my boss won't allow this and I can't do this and this won't work. And then like session three, they're like, oh, I tried it and it worked. And I'm like, oh, did it now? And someone saying, do you know, I thought about it and I thought that is one of my dyslexic. It's just those like little moments you catch someone get just it's just it never stops being an amazing privilege to help people and to watch someone change and grow. I mean, I do have a few clients that I kind of like, whenever I'm thinking about my marketing or thinking, I kind of, they're my like, okay, I know, I'm speaking to the Lucys of the world, um, where I think confidence is really my like key thing that I love working on, and does feel like so foundational to creating change. That yeah, when there's kind of those clicked moments, I think that does feel really nice. That's probably there's kind of some standouts. Like I said, the woman who left her husband was a bit of a shocker. Um, yeah, so certainly it's a very special place, coaching, and the kind of the transformations that people achieve, and the messages you get years later of
Yeah.
what you've helped people achieve, is really special. And I think my thing is that I felt when I started Dyslexia in Adults is that I wasn't achieving my potential. I was at risk of losing like my ability to kind of do what I knew I was capable of. And when I can help someone feel like they have achieved their potential, that for me is what really it's all
Yeah.
about.
Yeah, for sure.
That's
So
very inspiring.
yeah. Oh, no, for sure. And that's kind of Melissa and I go through the same thing with our students. We see them, we catch them at a younger age for sure, but we see them grow and mature. And boost their self-confidence. We experience the same type of thing. Um,
Mm.
so when working with clients, do you ever do like consultations with their friends or maybe family members or anything like that, and how they can support their loved one or the person they're alive with dyslexia?
No, we predominantly focus on work, just because the ROI of that, our programs aren't cheap. And so if someone can kind of transform their career, they can quickly make the money back that they may have invested in themselves. And so the focus is a lot more work kind of relevant. I have done a lot of sessions with people's bosses, to kind of help the boss understand what it is that they are kind of trying to ask for or trying to get, or our approach with the systems and strategies is like, let's make it achievable, like let's make it reachable, like that we don't, it doesn't have to be really onerous and difficult. So kind of really making sure that it feels like an easy lift, because it's not an easy lift, it's not going to happen. So I'd rather take the strategies down a notch and actually get it consistently happening. So I think that's a lot of what I have done is worked with people's kind of people that they're working with.
Yeah. So if you had somebody come up to you and say, "Hey, I really want to know how to support my dyslexic employee," besides yourself, which I'm sure you go, "Hey, hire me." But what
I think
could
I'm unhireable at this point. I've been self-employed for 6 years. I don't think anyone would hire me.
so funny? What would you where would you refer them to? I mean, your podcast, what is you have a podcast. So what is the name of your podcast?
It's Dyslexia in Adults across all of the website, the social media, so and the podcast, so it's all easily accessible. I think if I was like, it's really difficult because there's lots of challenges that are associated, and some people struggle with some things and some people don't. I think the kind of number one thing is that if you can have kindness to someone, that really just makes a huge amount of difference. Like, and the thing with kindness is that it kind of touches all areas. Kindness reinforces someone, and like, if you need 2 seconds to write something down, like that's fine. And all of those little things, I think we all know what a bad boss can feel like, and how much it can kind of really tear you down. Um, so, simple things like emailing instructions afterwards can make a huge difference. Or prioritization and planning meetings, helping someone kind of break down what they're working on and what they need to work on, and what might be going on with a specific project, and supporting with deadlines with that kind of thing for executive function issues with goal-directed persistence. I'm throwing in these terms so people can Google them afterwards and learn more.
Right.
Um, and so I think there's lots of simple things that can make a really big difference, that we haven't included in our free guide. So yeah, definitely worth checking that out.
Do you have anybody in your life that inspires you to do what you do? Or anybody in your past life? Or your
Gosh, yes. Yeah, it's a great question. Well, my dad used to work with Richard Branson, funnily enough, who's obviously a great patron of dyslexia. Um, so I think that was always a really interesting experience. He was quite early on in the days of Virgin Atlantic, so knew him quite well. And Dad always had this like interesting stories of how Richard would handle his neurodiversity, and how he was kind of okay with being stupid and asking questions that he didn't like. Rich Branson does a great analogy of not understanding net and gross profit
Yeah.
and all of those kind of things. So I think that was really an interesting experience. I think, to be honest, the people who push me the most, like most neurodiverse people, is like the people who told me I couldn't. They're the people that kind of really light a fire under me. I've got a little plan in a few months' time to write a letter to a few of the people that were quite rude to me as teachers. They're still working in my school.
Oh,
I've got
wow.
to gonna write them a letter and just be like, just to let you know, like I created this because of what you said to me.
Wow.
Just and a few bosses that were really like just nasty. One that said, "Are you lazy or are you stupid or maybe both?"
Oh, wow.
He was the one that like really pushed me over the line to start this. So yeah, I've got a plan in a few months' time to kind of write them letters. So I think
Almost,
like
almost a thank you note. Thank you for pushing me
that's
here.
that's what I'm gonna do is like you just to let you
Yeah.
know you said this to me this many years ago. I still remember. And this is, what I've now achieved because of comments like this.
Wow.
Which is a little like a little
Hey,
twisted, but I can't help myself.
I'm here for it.
Yeah.
Well, my compassionate heart feels so bad for you. Like, I just want to be like, yelling at them on your behalf too. And that's why I push so hard for my students when they're young. I don't want them to ever have to go through feeling that way. But it sounds to me like some of this is inevitable. They're going to constantly have struggles throughout their lives in different ways.
Yeah, and I think that's where you've got to get to that neutral standpoint. Like, yeah, okay, I'm not, if you want me to be the person who checks your work, like that's not me. Like that's not who I am. If you want great ideas, amazing kind of ways of connecting with people and explaining things. I can do that. Like that's really easy for me. But if you want a real detailed eye, like don't ask me. So I've kind of like hired very strategically for people to kind of take on those roles within my company. So I don't feel awkward about it. It's like no, like don't get Natalie to check that. Like, you get someone else to do it. I could do a design check. I can't do has that link been set up correctly check. And I just don't have any shame anymore. Like there's things that will take a lot for me to do. Like it will take a lot of spoons. But I can do and just require a lot of strategies, and that's fine. And then there's things that I can do really well and I find really easy, and that's cool too. And it's just neutral. That's what I think is really important for me.
Yeah.
This has been eye-opening and so inspiring. I'm so thankful that we were able to get you on this podcast. I
Oh, thank you.
so looking forward to having our audience hear you and your wisdom. Okay, so for the last question, I really want to ask you in my British accent, but Amy is like, don't use your British accent.
Oh, Americans are so bad at English accents.
Okay,
Don't do
Like,
it.
got
I
two
mean,
notes.
you can do it. I don't have high hopes for you.
I do. I already can tell you.
She doesn't want, she says no. She says, I'm not good at
I,
any
I
accents.
think you've got to do it.
I didn't say any. Your pirate accent's really funny.
My pirate accent. Okay. If you had one wish that you could grant
Lord.
our students, what would it be and why?
That is probably one of the best English accents I've heard from an American. It's not good, but it's a lot better than the rest. Because
Don't forget, it's not good. It's
most,
what she's heard.
because most people go the kind of Dick Van Dyke, like, core blind
Mary
me, like,
Poppins.
I'm English. And it's like, oh no, what are you doing? And at least you went for the kind of like, oh, I'm Mary Poppins and I'm kind of an austere nanny who will never smile. Which like I no, I was here for the approach.
Well, I'm really good about listening to intonation.
Mm.
That's my superpower. Like I hear a lot of different intonations in people's voices. So,
Well, my boyfriend is South African, so my accent's been really kind of like taken on a wild journey.
ah,
So I don't know if you've been trying to just kind of copy mine, then that's not the
I
winning.
might have a bit of
So,
yours and a bit of somebody else's. Who knows?
yeah, no, I think also you didn't have a great kind of like both of us were like, oh God, it's going to be bad. So we really didn't have a hope in hell. Um,
That's true.
I think I'm quite good at accents. I'm like tempted to answer back in an accent, but it could be
Yeah, you
offensive.
could answer in a Texas accent.
That no,
Yeah.
that's definitely going to be offensive. I won't do that. I can only do like British accents with some level of terribleness as well. So the question is,
If
well, what if I had one wish for your students, what would it be?
for any of our people that we serve. That's what I should say for the people we serve.
Gosh, it's a like a wide-ranging question. I think there is three pillars for success with a neurodiverse person. And so my wish for every person with neurodiversity is to have these three things. And so I guess that's what I wish for people. The first is to have kind of clear strategies for the things that you find difficult. And the way that I kind of describe it to people is you don't need the tools in your toolkit every day. But when, life throws things at you and you're feeling like it's really difficult, there's something really nice about going, okay, when it's hard, I do this. So just a feeling of knowing what to do because scrabbling around, feeling lost, not sure what to do, not sure how to approach things, it's just awful. And this feeling, this pit feeling in your stomach of like, I don't know what to do, and I'm just, oh, God help me. I think, is really important. So having clarity on what to do when you need it is really important. Um, the next thing is that I really hope that people's confidence doesn't get crushed, because it just does have such long-lasting effects. Um, I was doing some analysis the other day where someone on a average UK salary of £35,000 a year will, over their lifetime with dyslexia, likely lose £500,000, like in their lifetime over their salary, because of dyslexia, and a lot of that with confidence of not going for roles, not going for promotions, all that kind of thing. Um, so, my hope is that people can achieve that stance of like, I'm different and different is just neutral. I think that's really important. And then finally, it is to unlock your dyslexic strengths. So to be able to clearly and confidently communicate what you're good at and how that has achieved something. Because dyslexic strengths can feel quite fluffy and like unclear. And I remember saying to someone once, like, I don't care that I've got big picture thinking. I just want to get through the day. Um, and now I couldn't think of anything worse than having that taken from me. And I can clearly say my big picture thinking has led to this. And the one thing my whole team always says about me is like, oh my God, you are such a big picture thinker. Like your ability to see everything is insane. Um, and so, being able to clearly say, I'm good at this and it has resulted in this, I think is really difficult for a lot of dyslexia people. But if you can, then you're on a ticket for success. So that's what I would wish. Clarity of your systems for when you need them, confidence to feel that dyslexia is just neutral, and clarity of your dyslexic strengths to be able to provide specific examples of how they've helped you in life.
That's amazing.
I love that. That is the first time we've gotten three parts to our answer. And I love that because
I'm
it
a
actually
talker.
is very organized too. And it's very important to have those three different things in sight. I think that what I notice about my students, one of the first things that remediates, other than the phonological awareness, is their confidence. Their confidence increases tremendously when they start receiving the interventions that are appropriate for them. So I
Absolutely.
love to hear the piece that you had mentioned about the confidence, because it does take
Yeah,
you farther in life.
absolutely. Yeah. No, sorry, I'm a talker, so I couldn't help myself. It's a three-part answer.
I love it.
No, that's perfect. That's absolutely perfect. Well, my goodness, I think we came to the end. So we really appreciate you taking time. I think it's a 6-hour time difference between Central and, yeah, for sure. But we really appreciate you. Go have some dinner now. Um,
Thank you.
or we'll
It's
do it
only 6
Tuesday.
it's only
Supper.
6:30. It's only 6:30 in the
Oh,
UK right
well,
now. So it's not too bad, but it is a Friday night, so it's time for to go to the pub.
Yes, go relax and unwind and look
yeah.
for the royals.
There's going to be no royals where I am, unfortunately. But Melissa, my gift to you as a parting thing is I'll do one of my accents, and if it's bad, Greg can cut it out for me.
Oh, no, we're not going to cut it out.
I think my best is Northern Irish, so I'm going to go for that.
Okay.
Um, the Democratic Unionist Party is my Northern Irish accent, so kind of quite hard and quite strong at the front of your mouth, and like I really got to go grand with your Northern Irish accent. What do you think?
That I'm no expert on accents, but that sounded pretty good. We
Oh,
yeah.
thank you very much.
I loved it. I don't know anything about Ireland, except for I think that they say
After
love
you
all the
don't know
time.
anything about Ireland.
Yeah, I actually was trying to say an Irish accent the other day, and I accidentally talked like a pirate on one of our mini
On
podcasts.
a live podcast.
Yeah,
Live
so
podcast. And I go,
oops.
No, I think the least I could do if you did one accent is the least I could do is offer one
I
back.
love it. Thank you,
that was
Natalie.
good. That was good. That was real
Thank you.
good.
I've got Northern Irish friends, or North of Ireland, if depending on your like political opinion, that I've mimicked for years. So Melissa, I get your approach of just kind of like listening, be like, is that how they sound? Is that how they sound? Is that how they sound? And kind of like going over and over and over and over. So yeah, no, that's
Hilarious.
it's a lot of fun.
I
I
love
love
it.
it.
So
I
when
love
Amy and I take the show on the road, I do think that we need to go across the pond
I
and come
agree.
in person.
That sounds wonderful. Yeah, a road show sounds like the only way.
oh, would be super. It would be super.
I
So
could see it now. We just have this big collaborative event. We could set up shop outside of wherever you do your work, Natalie, and this would be amazing.
like a
Yeah,
live
why
pod out on
not?
the street.
Yeah.
We'll do it on the street with our microphones.
Yes.
You can time it up with another, like, I don't know, there might be another royal wedding or something.
Yes. When William and Catherine ascend the throne, I am all there.
There we go. There we
Oh,
go.
well, yeah, I would love that. And
That's
just,
happening pretty soon.
yeah, but everybody else is
Let's not
gonna be
discuss
there too.
regicide because I don't want to get called by the police.
Okay. Greg, cut that out.
That's funny. All right. Well, we appreciate your
Well,
time.
this is fun.
It was really lovely to meet you both, and thank you so much for today. It was a lovely chat. And if there's anything I can ever do for you guys in the future, I will probably be in touch next year when our book comes out to kind of see if we can come back on to kind of work on this. Getting released in the US as well. So
Oh, wonderful.
Very
yeah,
good.
it's Bloomsbury is our publisher, so it's kind of gonna be pretty big.
I'm excited about that. I would love that for that to be my library because I have kids that come in person with their parents, and of course, Apple and Tree. They want to see.
Absolutely.
Mhm.
Yeah. And sadly with the book title's been signed off, so it's Dyslexia in Adults, How to Build Strategies, Gain Confidence and Get Shit Done.
I love it.
Yeah.
Awesome. It's awesome.
Yeah. Yeah, no, looking
Oh,
forward to it. All right, thank you so much, ladies. I'm gonna log off and go immediately to the pub.
Okay. Thank you. And also, we will be sending you